No, but you're completely ignoring the actual historical context of the era. I mean, if you look at what he was doing, you've got to see this for what it actually is, which is, well, it's absolutely brilliant. It is properly genius. I mean, the sheer audacity of it.
You're joking. Brilliant. We're talking about the exact same film, right? Look, I'll give you historically interesting. Fine. It's a fascinating artifact, but a masterpiece. Come off it. It's a bit overhyped to me.
Overhyped. You can't be.
Honestly, yes. The messaging is so incredibly heavy-handed. It's a total shambles. And that ending, oh, don't even get me started on the ending. It is unbelievably dodgy.
Okay, right. Let's just unpack this for a second. If you are just joining us, welcome to the absolute madness. Pull up a stool, grab a metaphorical pint, because we are locked in a rather heated debate today over a film from 1925.
Very heated.
We've been aggressively digging through this incredible historical source book.
Cinema, the magic vehicle, a comprehensive guide. Journey 1, 1913 to 1950.
Right, and we've landed squarely on Carl Theodor Dreyer.
Exactly. We are looking at his Danish silent film, Master of the House. Or, if we're being precise about the original Danish title, Du skal din hustru.
Which roughly translates to, thou shalt honor thy wife.
Right. And I'm telling you right now, you have to look at this film as an early, radical champion of women's rights. It is a total masterclass in psychological realism. It is bloody brilliant.
And I am telling you, it's a lecture.
But you get to be the judge today. Sit there, listen to the evidence, and decide for yourself. Is this a cinematic miracle of the 1920s? Or, as my highly cynical friend here suggests, is it just an arrogant director delivering a boring, overly moralistic lecture on family values?
Oh, it's definitively the latter. It is absolutely a lecture, and a deeply hypocritical one at that, which we will get into.
I vehemently disagree.
What's truly fascinating here, though, is how modern film critics sort of romanticize Dreyer into this untouchable visionary.
Because he deserves it. Look at the context whiplash here. You simply cannot separate the film from the timeline. I mean, this is 1925. Dreyer had literally just come back to his native Denmark after a massive stint working in Germany. And what was he doing in Germany? He directed a film called Mikhail in 1924.
Yes, which is a very different beast.
Exactly. Now, the authors of our source book explicitly note Mikhail as the first serious film in history with homosexual overtones.
Just think about the sheer bravery of that for a second.
Well, it was the Weimar Republic, so...
Still, he makes this boundary-pushing, highly controversial, beautifully queer-coded film in the German studio system. And then what is his very next move?
He retreats to safety.
He does not retreat. He comes straight back to Copenhagen and decides to mercilessly dissect the toxicity of the traditional middle-class nuclear family.
By adapting a hugely popular stage play.
Yes, he adapts Tyrannen's Fall, which translates to The Tyrant's Fall, by a playwright named Sven Rindum. But I just think it's bloody brilliant that an artist goes from exploring one massive cultural taboo straight into the domestic sphere to challenge the status quo from inside the living room.
Right, hold on a second. It shows an incredible range and a genuine desire to poke the bear.
Let me stop you right there, because you're giving him way, way too much credit for being some kind of radical domestic insurgent.
How am I?
Returning to Denmark to adapt a popular stage play isn't revolutionary, mate. It's a commercial safety net. It's the 1920s equivalent of directing a Marvel movie after your indie passion project flops.
A safety net? He's systematically tearing apart the concept of the patriarchal master of the house. How is that safe?
Because he's doing it by adapting a play that was already wildly popular with the exact audience paying for tickets. Tyrannen's Fall was a known quantity.
But the way he did it...
No, listen, if we connect this to the bigger picture of the 1920s European film industry, you have to understand the financial reality. Yeah. Making a controversial film like Michael in a foreign studio system like Germany's UFA, which was a massive, highly industrialized machine, is incredibly risky.
Sure, it's risky.
So what does a director do when they need to recoup their cultural and literal capital? When they need a guaranteed hit to keep their career alive?
You're making him sound like a sellout.
They go home and they adapt a hit play. It's a director trying to recover his footing. It's not some brave avant-garde assault on the nuclear family. It's a completely savvy, calculated career move. He knew the Danish middle class would turn up in droves because they had already bought tickets to the play.
You're being incredibly cynical. Even if it was a popular play, taking that material and choosing to focus the cinematic lens on the silent misery of a middle-class wife wasn't your standard popcorn fare.
It was literally a mainstream stage hit.
But cinema was different. It was still a very new, very raw medium. It's a massive pivot from his previous work in Germany. It takes guts to look at the domestic sphere, the boring everyday living room, and say, there's a war going on in here, and I'm going to film it.
A pivot, sure, but let's not pretend he's a martyr for doing it. He found a very convenient commercial vehicle.
I think you're undermining the artistic intent.
Artists in the 1920s European cinema scene were under massive pressure to deliver financial returns. Post-World War I, Europe was economically devastating.
I know that, but
Pushing boundaries in Germany with expressionism and taboo subjects is one thing. Paying your bills and keeping your local studio afloat in Copenhagen is another entirely.
fine. Let's say, just for the sake of argument, that it was a safer bet financially to adapt Sven Rindam's play. I'll concede that it had a built-in bourgeois audience ready to buy tickets.
Thank you.
But wait until you hear how he actually built this set for this allegedly safe commercial play. You absolutely cannot call his execution safe. In fact, it borders on absolute obsession. It is wild.
Oh, here we go. We're going to talk about the plumbing, aren't we?
Yes, the plumbing. Listen to this, because here's where it gets really interesting for anyone who cares about film history.
Brace yourselves.
To film this story, which takes place almost entirely inside a claustrophobic, tiny Danish flat, Dreyer didn't just throw up 3 flimsy wooden walls on a soundstage, paint a window on a backdrop, and call it a day.
Like a normal director would.
He meticulously recreated the entire household in the studio. And I don't just mean getting the right wallpaper. I mean, he installed working gas lines.
Which is mental.
He installed running water. He had fully functioning electrical appliances rigged up. A silent film.
Exactly, a silent film.
They built the kitchen, the dining room, a working stove, a cuckoo clock with a heart-shaped pendulum, a literal canary cage. He plumbed a temporary movie set. I'm sorry, but this is properly genius. It is a level of dedication that is just mind-blowing for 1925.
That's rubbish, mate. It's not genius, it's completely mental.
How is it mental? It creates a flawless, hyper-realistic environment for the actors.
Because, as you just said, it's a silent film. The audience in the cinema cannot hear the water running.
That's not the point.
They cannot hear the gas hissing on the stove. Why on earth would you spend the studio's limited money, time, and resources plumbing a temporary wooden set with real, highly combustible gas and pressurized water when the medium you are working in cannot even capture the sensory output of those elements?
Because it affects the performance.
It's not genius. It's just the director being an arrogant perfectionist. It's an ego trip of the highest order.
No, you're missing the entire psychology of performance. Think about modern-day method actors.
Well,
Right?
please don't bring method acting into this.
No, hear me out. You hear these wild stories today about actors wearing intensely uncomfortable, period-accurate underwear that the camera will never see. Or an actor only eating raw bison for a month, or staying in character on set for 6 months straight.
Which is also usually an ego trip.
The audience in the cinema can't see the underwear. They can't taste the raw bison. But the actor feels it. That internal, visceral reality translates directly into their physical performance.
I think that's a massive stretch.
It's not. By having real gas, real running water, real heat radiating off that stove, Dreyer allowed actors like Johannes Meyer and Astrid Holm to achieve this incredible, matter-of-fact, lived-in realism.
They're actors. They can pretend a stove is hot.
The writers of cinema, the Magic Vehicle, specifically point out that this extreme set design made it infinitely easier for the protagonists to achieve truly realistic behavior. They weren't miming, they were living in that space.
Look, I understand the theory, but I completely disagree that it was practically necessary.
It clearly worked.
You're telling me an actor of Johannes Meyer's caliber, who was a massive star of Danish cinema at the time, couldn't pretend to turn on a tap? That's quite literally their job. They are actors.
It's not about just pretending to turn a tap. It's about the physical weight of reality. You have to remember how he shot this. The camera was placed incredibly close to them.
Almost uncomfortably close.
Exactly. The source analysis actually compares Dreyer's precise observation of human behavior in this film to an educational documentary. It's almost clinical.
That I will agree with.
If you are shooting that tight in a severely claustrophobic space, any slight artificiality, a prop door that's too light, a tap that doesn't resist when you turn it, a stove that doesn't make you sweat, it is going to show up in the micro expressions on their faces.
But you have to ask yourself, does physical realism actually translate through a 1925 silent camera lens?
I just argued that it does.
Let's paint a real picture of what that set was actually like, right? Because for those listening who aren't film historians, back then they were largely using something called orthochromatic film stock.
Right, the early film stock.
Now, orthochromatic stock is notoriously insensitive to certain spectrums of light, specifically red. Because of this, it required an absolutely massive amount of light just to get a usable exposure indoors.
It was bright, yes.
So to light this so-called realistic little flat, they would have had blindingly bright, incredibly hot Klieg lights inches away from the actors' faces.
That's just the reality of filmmaking at the time.
You've got a massive wooden camera being loudly hand-cranked a few feet away by a bloke sweating through his shirt. The environment is inherently, inescapably artificial.
But the physical props were real.
Having plumbed water doesn't change the fact that Johannes Meyer is standing under the equivalent of the blazing desert sun, covered in heavy grease paint makeup, trying not to blink.
You're exaggerating.
I reckon the plumbing is a fascinating bit of trivia. Yeah, but it's sheer excess. It's a director exerting total, uncompromising control over his environment, which, ironically enough, mirrors the tyrannical husband in the film perfectly.
Wow, okay, turning Dreyer into his own villain. But let's talk about that environment, because the claustrophobia of it is absolutely crucial to the narrative.
It is very tight.
Picture this flat. Just imagine it. It is tiny. It is suffocating. You got the kitchen bleeding right into the dining room, the hot stove right next to the table, and in the dead center of it all, you have this canary in a cage.
Right.
And that canary is just the most perfect, heartbreaking metaphor for the wife, Ida. Both of them are trapped in this meticulously constructed box, and both of them are being absolutely terrorized by the husband.
Right, Victor Franson, the titular master of the house.
Exactly. So let's look at the actual plot mechanics here, because it is a brilliantly constructed psychological breakdown of a marriage.
It's certainly breakdown.
Victor is this deeply tetchy, bitter, thoroughly unpleasant middle-class husband.
Yeah.
He's lost his job. They are having massive financial difficulties. The stress is mounting.
And he takes it out on everyone else.
Right. Instead of stepping up to support his partner, he just unloads all his inadequacy and frustration on his family. He mentally tortures his wife. He bullies his 3 kids. I mean, even the bloody canary gets yelled at.
He is awful to that bird.
And Ida, the wife, is just working herself to the bone. She does all the heavy physical domestic chores all day long. And then, completely unseen by him, she sews all night long just to make a few extra pennies to make ends meet.
While he's asleep.
Yes. She is literally falling ill from the sheer relentless exhaustion of it. It's devastating.
It's a remarkably grim setup, I'll give you that. It absolutely does not pull its punches on how miserable this guy is making his family. It's quite uncomfortable to watch, even now.
It's harrowing. Which is exactly why I say it's the archetypal psychological film of the era. The surgical precision with which Dreyer observes this daily domestic abuse is incredible.
He does focus on the small details.
He doesn't need grand melodramatic gestures. The abuse is in the way Victor demands his boots be cleaned or how he complains about the food. It's in the mundane.
True.
But here is the massive turning point of the film. The old nanny, a character named Mads, played brilliantly by Mathilde Nielsen. She has been watching all this happen.
Lurking in the background.
And she finally steps in. She persuades Ida, this deeply maltreated, exhausted wife, to actually leave the house, to pack her bags, take a break, and just go.
A radical move.
In 1925, a woman walking out on her husband. And then the old nanny takes over the running of the house, specifically to teach Victor a lesson. She is the undisputed hero of this story.
Hold on.
Mathilde Nielsen's performance is spot on. She is the circuit breaker that destroys the cycle of abuse.
Wait. Hero. Are we sure about that?
Yes, absolutely.
Did you just completely gloss over the part in the historical analysis where it explicitly states the nanny enforces a despotic regime?
She had to be tough. She was giving him a desperately needed taste of his own medicine.
She doesn't just give him a taste. She completely strips him of all the creature comforts he's used to. She humiliates him, and she rules the house with a total iron fist.
Because that's what he was doing to Ida.
But how on earth is swapping one domestic tyrant out for another domestic tyrant a psychological masterpiece? It doesn't make it a nuanced exploration of human behavior. It makes it a rigid, punishing morality play.
It's corrective behavior.
Our own source material literally says the film resembles a lecture on the obligations of family life. And it does. It's a Sunday school lesson with better lighting.
A lecture he desperately needed to hear.
Yeah.
Victor was systematically destroying his wife. Someone had to break his ego.
I am absolutely not defending Victor. He's awful. But structurally, as a piece of cinema, when your narrative solution to complex domestic abuse is to bring in a magical, dictatorial nanny to punish the husband like a naughty Victorian schoolboy, you lose all the psychological realism you were just praising 5 minutes ago.
I don't see it that way at all.
Look, let's pose this directly to you, the listener, right now. Hear me out. What would you do? Put yourself in that tiny, claustrophobic flat.
It's a tough situation.
If you were the nanny seeing this horrific abuse, would you step in and rule the house with an iron fist to break the guy's spirit? Or is becoming a despot yourself just perpetuating the exact same toxic power dynamic, just with a different person holding the whip?
It is entirely different. It's not the same dynamic at all because she's doing it to emancipate the wife.
Is she, though?
Yes. She's doing it to forcibly make Victor realize how much invisible labor Ida was doing every single day. He had no idea she was sewing all night.
He was completely oblivious, yes.
He had no idea how physically hard it was to cope with the running of that household, from the cleaning to the cooking to the accounting. The nanny's harshness, her despotic regime, was absolutely necessary to lay the groundwork for the film's ultimate feminist message.
Oh, right, the feminist message. This is where the whole argument completely falls to pieces for me.
How can you possibly say that? Film historians broadly agree this is one of the earliest films to gently but firmly expound a truly feminist point of view.
Gently.
It actively defends women's rights. It takes the unseen exhaustion of unpaid domestic labor and puts it on a massive silver screen for everyone to see.
Yes, the first half does that quite well. The setup is strong. I'll give you that.
Thank you.
And then we get to the ending.
There we go.
The most dodgy, hypocritical, utterly baffling resolution I've ever seen in a so-called progressive film.
The ending is a beautiful, earned reconciliation.
You can't be serious. Let's break down exactly what happens step by step so everyone listening understands what you're fiercely defending here.
Go ahead.
Victor is subjected to the nanny's despotic regime. He realizes the house is incredibly hard to run. He learns his wife is deathly ill from the sheer exhaustion of serving him.
Right.
He recognizes his own selfish, tyrannical behavior. Okay, fine. It's a standard paint-by-numbers redemption arc. He repents.
It's moved.
But then what happens? Does he pledge to share the household chores? Does he promise to treat his wife as a genuine equal partner going forward?
He's a changed man.
No. He, and I am quoting the historical analysis directly here, asserts his authority over the nanny. He puts the very woman who taught him the lesson right back in her subservient place.
That's of his characterization.
He successfully resets the patriarchy.
He's just reestablishing his proper role in the house, but as a reformed, enlightened man. He literally falls down and begs his wife's forgiveness.
Whoa, he begs forgiveness. How incredibly sweet. And what is his reward for no longer being an emotionally abusive tyrant?
He gets his family back.
What is his grand prize for finally achieving the bare minimum of human decency? His mother-in-law literally hands him a massive check to go and purchase an optician's shop.
It's a symbolic restoration of his ability to provide for his family. It shows he's regained his dignity.
It's a literal cash prize. It is a massive financial buyout. Congratulations, Victor. You finally stopped terrorizing the canary and your wife. Here is a small business to call your own.
You're being so reductive.
It is a complete shambles of an ending. It totally and utterly undermines the gritty, claustrophobic realism of the first half.
It does not.
And the symbolism, good grief, the cuckoo clock with the heart-shaped pendulum that starts swinging again to symbolize their newfound romantic reconciliation. It is so incredibly obtrusive, so painfully neat and tidy, it completely ruins the message.
See, I think you are unfairly judging a 1925 film by modern 2026 standards.
I'm judging it by its own setup.
You have to understand the specific audience of the time and the mechanics of releasing a film in that era. To show a woman actively leaving an abusive husband, to show the brutal reality of her physical exhaustion from domestic labor, that was incredibly radical for a mainstream film.
It was, but he chickened out at the end.
The ending, the optician shop, the swinging heart clock, yes, maybe it feels a bit overly Me Too, maybe it is a compromise, but it was a necessary narrative compromise to make the medicine go down for a bourgeois 1920s audience.
Oh, come on.
Think about it. If the film ended with the wife leaving him forever, moving out and establishing her own independence, the film probably would have been outright banned by the censors or boycotted by the exact middle-class men who needed to see it.
That's entirely speculative.
Dreyer had to wrap it in a neat, socially acceptable bow of reconciliation. So the core radical message about women's rights could actually be screened in cinemas across Europe.
That is a massive assumption on your part.
It's logical.
We've literally just discussed how he made Mikhail a year prior in Germany, a film which absolutely did not pull its punches regarding its controversial themes. So why suddenly compromise here? Why back down?
Because it's a different market, a different country.
The critical analysis in our sourcebook itself points out that the conclusion of the dramatic structure and the overarching message are somewhat obtrusive. It's not just me being a cynic saying this. The historical consensus agrees that it hits you over the head with a mallet.
Obtrusive doesn't mean invalid.
He was acting as a moralist, defending the rights of women on one hand, yes, but doing so in a way that ultimately rewarded the male oppressor financially and socially on the other.
Complex.
Why an optician's shop, by the way? Is it some heavy-handed metaphor about Victor finally seeing clearly? It's just so painfully literal. It's contradictory at its core.
Well, even if you find the narrative resolution frustratingly contradictory, you absolutely cannot deny the absolute cinematic wizardry of how Dreyer actually tells the story.
Right, let's pivot to the technical side.
Put the plot aside for a second and look at the technique. The film features a witty, incredibly sparkling directorial display. It is, without a doubt, a masterpiece of silent cinema editing.
Okay, fine, I'll give you that one. It's not dreadful to look at. The rhythm of the editing is actually quite good.
Quite good. It perfectly prefigures his later undisputed masterpiece, The Passion of Joan of Arc.
Which is a genuinely brilliant film.
Look at the inherent mechanics of silent cinema for a second. The fundamental agonizing weakness of the entire medium is the title card.
It breaks the flow, yes.
You have this visual, flowing narrative that has to constantly stop dead in its tracks, cut to a stark black screen with white text, let the audience read the dialogue or the exposition at whatever speed they read, and then abruptly cut back to the action.
It completely shatters the tension.
Exactly. Imagine reading a really thrilling, fast-paced novel, but every single time a character speaks, someone forcefully yanks the book out of your hands, makes you read their dialogue off a separate chalkboard across the room, and then hands the book back.
That's a good analogy, actually.
That's the tension killer that every single silent director had to try and solve.
Right, the interruption of narrative by titles. It is the major hurdle of the era. It's what makes a lot of early silent films feel so sluggish to modern viewers.
Exactly. But Dreyer's shots in this film are so meticulously chosen. The framing is so precise, and the title cards are inserted with such an incredible musical sense of rhythm that it almost completely obviates that weakness.
It is relatively smooth.
It feels entirely fluid. The editing actually maintains the intense psychological tension of this claustrophobic flat despite the constant text screams. It's almost a modern rapid-fire pacing applied to a very intimate, quiet domestic drama.
I will concede that his editing rhythm is highly impressive for 1925.
See? Genius.
He doesn't let the title cards linger too long, he doesn't overwrite them, and he cuts on action quite well to keep the eye moving. But, and this is a major but, I will caveat that by saying, relying on text cards to deliver what is essentially a heavy-handed moral lecture is still a massive narrative crutch.
How is it a crutch? It's how they communicated.
No matter how rhythmic or fluid the visual editing is, when a character essentially stops the film to deliver a thesis statement on family obligations via a giant text card, it completely rips you out of the psychological realism you've been raving about.
But the dialogue scenes themselves are brought to absolute perfection.
Yeah.
It's not just dry exposition on those cards. It's sharp, it's witty. It has a very deliberate inclusion of humor to cut the tension.
It has its moments.
And the acting. The acting is incredibly restrained, which perfectly balances out any of the obtrusive messaging you're complaining about. They maintain this spirit of analytical, matter-of-fact realism precisely because the editing is so tight and the performances are so grounded.
They are grounded, yes. Johannes Meyer and Astrid Holm do incredible subtle work with their faces.
They're beautiful to watch.
They really capture that deep-seated exhaustion and bitterness without waving their arms around like pantomime villains.
Exactly. No theatrical overacting.
But again, if we connect this to the bigger picture, the broader legacy of the film, Dreyer is using all of this undeniable technical brilliance, the insanely plumbed sets, the rhythmic editing, the beautifully restrained acting, to ultimately deliver a very traditional, very conservative conclusion where the husband gets his authority back and a brand new shop to boot.
You just can't let the shop go, can you?
It's a beautifully wrapped, technically flawless package containing a very messy, highly compromised ideology.
See, I just think you're totally missing the forest for the trees here. Master of the House is a brilliant, entirely foundational piece of feminist cinema.
I completely disagree with foundational piece of feminist cinema.
It exposed the brutal reality of domestic life in a way that had simply never been done before on film. It laid the groundwork for future directors to treat the home not just as a pretty backdrop for silly melodrama, but as a genuine psychological battlefield. It demands absolute respect for what it achieved in 1925.
And I maintain wholeheartedly that it is a beautifully shot, heavily flawed, over-moralistic lecture.
You are impossible.
It's a fascinating historical artifact, a stepping stone in cinematic technique, but let's not pretend its ending isn't a massive, cowardly betrayal of its own progressive premise.
Well, we are clearly not going to reach a consensus on this today. You're far too stubborn.
I'm just looking at the facts, mate.
But before we wrap up, I want to leave you, listening at home or on your commute, with a thought to mull over.
A provocative thought.
We spent the last hour aggressively arguing about a silent film from 1925 that boldly exposed the literal exhaustion of unpaid domestic labor. Ida doing the back-breaking chores by day, and then the hidden, entirely unseen labor of sewing by night just to keep the family financially afloat.
Which, despite my issues with the ending, is a genuinely brilliant observation by Dreyer, I'll admit that.
It really is. But fast forward 100 years to today. Look around. How much of that hidden, exhausting labor dynamic is still happening behind closed doors right now?
A staggering amount, I'm sure.
How many modern households are silently struggling with the exact same suffocating imbalance of invisible chores, emotional labor, and financial stress, just waiting for some metaphorical nanny to kick the door down and fix it all for them?
That raises a very uncomfortable but incredibly important question about how far we've actually come since 1925.
Exactly. So if you want to dig into the actual history, the political context of the era, and decide for yourself if Victor truly deserved that optician shop,
He absolutely didn't. Not in a million years.
you need to read the primary source for yourself. Check out Cinema, the Magic Vehicle, Journey 1, 1913 to 1950.
Read the book, look at the historical evidence, and tell me I'm wrong. You can't.
They absolutely can, because you are completely wrong. We're out of time. Cheers for listening. We'll see you next time.
It's a total shambles of an ending.
It's a foundational masterpiece.
Subbish. Absolute rubbish.